Hi there, I'm Emily Schaller, and you're watching the RoxyF Boltcast. Before we get started, there's a few things we need to go over. First off, nothing on this podcast should be considered medical advice. Medical advice should only come from your doctor. Views expressed on this podcast are solely opinions of the guest and not necessarily opinions of myself or the RoxyF Foundation. Enjoy this episode of the RoxyF Boltcast. This episode of the RoxyF Boltcast is sponsored by Vertex. What is your diagnosis story? I've known you since 2013 apparently now, but if you could dig in, say like when you were diagnosed, how you were diagnosed, maybe family history, that would be a great way to start.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was born in California in a really small hospital in Sacramento in 1983. I was the first kid in our family born with CF. I was born really early in the morning and seemingly fine. I'm a middle child, so my sister was 2.5. But I was born, and so my mom had been through, labor before, and normal kid. My sister was fine, so they really didn't think anything of it. I was very fortunate. I wish I remembered the name of the doctor, but small hospital, not very many babies born, and he happened to recognize the symptoms of a meconium ileus blockage.
Oh, yeah.
So I had a lot of swelling in my belly. I was eating fine, but was having issues, obviously, because I hadn't moved my first bowel. And that at that point, at 36 hours old, they airlifted me to a bigger hospital, and I had emergency surgery. And that's when I was diagnosed. They were like, this is a symptom of CF. And then I think there was a sweat test. But I was diagnosed at birth, which in 83 was kind of rare to be diagnosed and then to have lived through that. I mean, I was just very lucky that they managed to catch it so quickly after I was born. And then I was very fortunate because not only did I have surgery at that age, but they had zero issues with the surgery. So they basically went in, I had no bowel removal, I had no any kind of additional issues. They basically massaged my bowel and I was fine. And so I have a great scar, but less work for it, I guess.
I was going to ask you about that scar because you've seen so many pictures of our friends.
Source of pride. I mean, the picture they have from my birth, my parents were really big into photography. My dad was a photographer casually, not professionally.
Yeah.
He was always a casual everything. So I have lots of like Polaroid photos and my scar. I was very small. I was about 7 pounds, 11 ounces when I was born. So my scar, my incision, it was like my whole stomach when I was born. Now it's like a lot smaller because I've grown up, but it's like this, it's hardly noticeable now, but it was very noticeable when I was little. Big source of pride for me is where I was like, my battle wound, right? Like that was, I lived.
So prognosis-wise, do you know what your parents were told? Because my parents they always said, I think high school, and then they actually said, no, they told us 12. Once I got a little older, they told us that. So what was your prognosis? What were they told? And like what medications? Walk us through those like early childhood medications and chest percussion.
Yeah, so prognosis, I vaguely remember, I recall them being told 25 would be my lifespan. I probably wouldn't make it into my teenage years. It was all doom and gloom back then, so there was no positive prognosis. There was no, well, she's gonna make it, if we do all the things right, or here, we try all these things, she'll do well. And it was 25, maybe if you're lucky, that's like the oldest you're gonna get. And then you might not make it out of childhood. Yep. And that was really like the explanation of my parents. And back then, so I had, it was the 80s, it was hard to find good medication. And California, we were lucky because, a lot more progressive medical field out there. So there was a lot of awareness. CFRI was based in California. So there were all these things, and my parents were huge, let's go find the right answer. So I had a really nice blend of homeopathic medicine and
Awesome.
whatever Western medicine could offer me at the time. And
That's cool.
I remember my mom telling me that they used to crush my enzymes, which was my problem.
Oh,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah. So
Did they put them on applesauce or they just crushed?
Yeah. I was breastfed. So, I mean,
cool.
you know, I don't know how my mom got me to take, but they crushed them, which we now know is not how you do that. And so I had so many problems. I couldn't gain weight. So I lost about 1.25 pounds or something when I left the hospital. So I was down, you know, around the 6 pound mark and my baby pictures are hilarious. I just look like this little alien skinny thing. I just look horrible. I look like this alien creature because it was just so small. And then they were doing everything they thought that was right, but it wasn't.
Right.
And so it was really hard to like have that awareness, you know, it's like, and then all you're told is, well, your kid's not probably going to make it.
Well, exactly.
And then my sister had medical problems. She had kidney disease. And so they were already dealing with that. So it was just chest percussions. I mean, they started doing all that really young. I don't remember, and I don't have a lot of pictures of, as a baby, any kind of like face masks or albuterol or things like that. I mean, I know that it happened. I'm assuming when I was little, but I think that came a little bit later. I think along with like my first hospitalization when I was 8, I was super active as a kid. So once I got out of like baby stages, you know, and then once we figured out the enzyme thing and we were heavily involved in CFRI at that point.
Love that.
And then you have so much more awareness because then all of a sudden we're not the only ones who are dealing with it.
You know, your parents especially were able to meet other parents and talk about what you're doing, but really we didn't have any treatments aside from enzymes until 1993 when Pomazyme came out. So like, it was like sharing little bits of information that you could, but we didn't have anything until you and I were like teens or preteens.
Yeah, I mean, and maybe that's why I don't remember doing breathing treatments because it's like that's
exactly
so much later. And yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that I don't have many true memories. I'm very thankful for my parents taking so many photos, but I really have a hard time with like long-term memory and remembering some of the things that I experienced, mostly because I think for trauma, like you go through the things, and while I don't think that my young CF journey was overly traumatic, I can only imagine like your brain is trying to like figure out what is okay. And then as I've aged, I've just really struggled with trying to remember that. So just like looking at old photos, I'm like, oh yeah, I think I remember something along those lines like that. I think the enzymes, one of my favorite things, and I do remember this, I remember this very vividly. We were at a CFRI Christmas dinner in California where you're sitting next to like, 10 other CF patients and you're like, yeah, this is cool. And I remember there was a kid who wouldn't take their enzymes because they just didn't understand like that was important. And it's scary to try to swallow so many pills.
Yep.
So I would sit with those kids and I would stick my enzymes on my fingers.
Yep.
Because, sticky. And I would show them how fun it was to take enzymes, and you could make it fun and it didn't have to be scary. And those are some of like my favorite memories of like having these weird trauma relationships, I guess. Like, you just, but it's how it was, and you with this so experience to have, to be a leader in that space and to say, it's okay to be scared, but it's also okay to be okay with what you're doing, and to demonstrate like for those other kids who weren't sure or were newly diagnosed. And then it was like, no, here, we're going to take our pills together. Like this is, and we're going to eat because that's what we need to do.
You got to eat. Yeah. Wow. Like, so how cool for you that you could be that mentor and like in that moment, jump into it and be like, all right, no, I'm going to show you guys how to do this. It's okay to do it. We got to eat. Kind of like spur of the moment, right? Because you probably just saw a kid struggling and you're like, let me jump in and help you.
Yeah.
Which like, it's so different today, obviously for many reasons with modulators, treatments, which we'll get into. But like in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, like we could be together. And like you said, those trauma experiences are probably some of the best. Like being in the hospital with my CF friends. Now, unfortunately, only one is still alive, who I saw this week. But those experiences that we all went through together made it special. And now we don't really have that. One, because people are healthier, which is amazing. But two, it's like we're not supposed to or allowed to. So what a different time, and what like crazy weird memories. I love the sticking the enzymes to the fingers. I'm gonna do that for my snack later.
Yeah, it was just one of those weird things, and I'm the age where we did CF camp.
Oh yeah.
So out in California, we did, we would go up to Lassen Pines, and I'll never forget the place where we went was St. Dorothy's Rest. I still have a pin, and somewhere there's a photo. I wouldn't know where to find it, but there's like a huge photo of us all. And yeah, speaking of people who aren't around anymore, like the few that I had connections with, for different reasons. And it wasn't all CF, because the camp I went to was hospital camp. I'm sure it had a name, but that's what we called it. It was hospital camp. And if you were a kid at a certain age and you had been in that hospital out in San Francisco for any procedure, so I had a family who had 2 CF patients and then 1 non-CF kid. And the non-CF kid finally got to go to hospital camp because they had their appendix removed. So then we were all at, hospital camp. So it was like a variety of kids. It wasn't.
You probably faked it. You faked that.
Yeah, just like, I have to go to the hospital so I can go to camp with my siblings. But it was like, cancer kids and all sorts of other, it wasn't just CF kids. But I did go to CF camp for the first time when I was 8 years old. And that's where I got Pseudomonas. Shocking.
Wait, what year were you born?
83.
Okay, so a year after me. Yep, so I was at camp right when you were at camp in Michigan, but still the same.
Yeah.
Same vibe. Ours was in a hospital camp. It was CF only. But how wild. And then I remember getting the letter in the mail that said, camp is going to be split into 2 sessions now if you have Pseudomonas. Oh. It was Pseudomonas cepacia at the time. You will go the second half. The first half will be non-sick kids. And then they're like, no, this isn't going to work either.
Yeah, and I remember when that happened. So my family was in California until 96, and then my dad's company was bought, and we had the opportunity to stay in California or move to Delaware. And at that time, I was 12 and a half. And at that point, I would say I was pretty normal kid. I was hospitalized every 6 months to 8 months on purpose, the preventative maintenance. I had done a lot of home IVs though too. And at that point I was pretty resistant to all of the home IVs or oral antibiotics. So IVs were my only option. And we did place a port when I was in California. So I think California was my first port placement. A little on the vein side, my ports were placed on my left side.
Ooh,
so right along my rib cage. Because I knew that I would always be skinny and I didn't want to have the scar up here on my chest. It was just something that I was like, I had seen it on other kids and I didn't want it.
I know.
So I was like, let's do it here. That's not awkward. Yeah, it wasn't awkward when I was 12, and then I grew up and it was very awkward to hold myself up while people tried to stick needles in my side. So we placed a port because, my veins at that point were shot. Trying to do PICC lines, and I was skinny, so it was like impossible to do PICC lines when I was little. And they would just pull out. Like I pulled my photo albums, and I have these great photos from my birthday in '92 where I'm sitting at a table in the hospital with my arm like this because I know exactly what was happening to that photo. And the IV was slowly pulling itself out of my arm while I'm sitting there blowing my birthday candles out that we had. And I was in isolation because I had been exposed to the chicken pox, and so I couldn't leave my room.
Oh my.
It's like, what kind of chaos is happening? You're just like, okay, cool.
If we can deal with that, we can deal with anything.
Exactly, yeah. It's definitely built who I am.
So with your childhood, you can say you were hospitalized like every 6 to 8 months, but you're doing home IV, so your CF was kind of progressing more at a younger age, right?
Yeah, I would say I don't ever remember it being terribly aggressive. I always remember being thin. I do remember the stories that my parents told me about when I was first hospitalized, that my lungs were so thick with mucus that when they did the x-ray, they wouldn't show my mom the x-ray until my dad came from work because they were so concerned, and they were like, your daughter should not be functional. And I was out running circles around the building. Like, I've just always been very high functioning and relatively asymptomatic. So that was always very odd to me. Like, I've had a really hard time producing mucus, even though it was there.
Oh, it was there, yeah.
Yeah, always very like high energy, very, very high energy. I mean, I would run circles around people. I was homeschooled. My parents chose to homeschool us. My mom really didn't want us, for the drug, you're exposed to so much in a public school setting. And so really kept us healthy. And I do think that like a lot of my medical experiences were very preventative. Or
I think so.
Keep it well. And I didn't really start gaining weight until I was, like I said, we finally got my enzymes figured out. So like in my teens, I really started to kind of like, my hormones are leveling out.
Exactly. Yeah.
I was able to gain a little bit more weight. My lungs were in the 80 percentile. Like I was pretty healthy.
Yeah.
Pretty much my whole life. I mean, I was in and out of the hospital, but it was more of a preventative experience, I would say.
Yeah. And that's interesting with like homeschooling, especially when we were kids, like, because we were more prone to infection. I was sick so much in school because you're exposed to kids all the time, right? So maybe there was something to it, like you being home and not exposed to all those germs. And now we're like, all right, kids, go out and get all the germs you can get. But that's because now we have backup measures and medications and modulators. So like, it's good. But I mean, honestly, kudos to your parents for putting your health first. Were you also exercising? I mean, running circles, of course, but were you doing sports? And were you ever told by the CF team, like, exercise is good for you, sports are good for you? Or did your parents just kind of instinctively figure that out?
Growing up, we were heavily involved in church, and we did the Awana program. And so it was like, church camp, and we had Olympics. So you could participate in these huge church games, and I would go, and I participated with an IV one time, which I think is hilarious.
Love it.
But I love to run, and I love to just be outside. And I remember growing up in California, the only time my mom wouldn't let me go outside was when the air quality was bad. Yeah. And I remember being angry that they wouldn't let me go outside because the weather was bad, and I was like, well, that's not fair. And it was like, well, you don't really have a choice, Right. I don't want you to die.
You can't risk it.
But I love to swim. We grew up in the foothills of California, going to, my grandparents' house and out wild and free.
Awesome.
I was my mom's worst nightmare. Not only was I hospitalized all the time, but I also could not sit still. So trampoline, and I broke my wrist when I was young because I was swinging on bars in our backyard. My dad built us a whole jungle gym in the backyard.
Sweet.
So no organized sports, but just lots of outside stuff. We camped a lot growing up. So always, I don't think I wore shoes for most of my childhood.
So I obviously not being exposed to all the germs as a kid was good, but then movement, exercise, without you guys knowing was probably another good thing. And then you're out in the air. So good for you.
I think we were more on the side of be careful. I think there was more caution than there was acceptance. It was be careful. She has a port, so you can't do X, Y, and Z. Well, it never stopped me. I was out on the swing set, or I broke my arm and I was still doing the monkey bars or climbing the tree. Or when I was in high school, we moved to a more formalized school setting. So I was in what we called an independent study program, where I went one day a week with other students. And it was more organized, and we still didn't have sports. Kind of in my teenage years, I really stopped doing any kind of formal physical activity. I mean, I was still very active in being outside, but I wasn't running. We still did a lot of stuff outside. I loved rock climbing, so I've done, different rock climbing walls. There were gyms. But kind of my teenage and early 20s, I just kind of oh, I'm cool. I don't really need to do any of that. I don't feel the need to. Was really healthy at that time. So I didn't really think that I needed to do any kind of physical activity that wasn't more than I was already doing.